Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, and welcome to the Amateur Otaku podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Isaac Wolf, and joining me today is my good friend and co-host co-host, Michael Thomas. How's it going, buddy?
It is going well, Isaac. Can't wait to talk about a Studio Ghibli movie. It's been a minute.
Or,
No, not
oh,
Ghibli movie.
that Hayao Miyazaki movie.
Yeah.
Before the listeners here who has been with us since the beginning knows that I'm a big Hayao Miyazaki fan, or
Yes.
should I say Studio Ghibli in general. But we haven't been, you haven't been around talking much about Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, so I figure before we go into the movie a little bit, what are your experience with the studio slash director?
Yeah, so as most people who might be following might have realized, I'm not a big anime guy. I'm kind of just like everything we talk about is me usually watching it for the first time or covering anime for the first time. So with Miyazaki, the first movie of his I've seen was My Neighbor Totoro, and that was like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. Because the pandemic has lost all sense of time. It feels like it was just yesterday, but yeah, it's probably like 4 years ago now. Um, and so I decided I'm gonna get through the Ghibli movies this year, at least as many as I can. So the next film that I watched was Nausicaa. Honestly, yeah. So this is my second Ghibli movie.
No, Hayao Miyazaki movie technically, since it's not.
Technically speaking, though it's under the Ghibli section on HBO Max, so take that how you will.
Yeah, I know that
It's been
some will be.
adopted.
Yeah, I know that there's some people that are probably gonna point it out to us. So I just felt that it's yes, we know that it's Top Craft that's behind it, but it's a Miyazaki movie.
It technically, yeah. So yeah, it was this and Princess Mononoke. So those are my first three. Currently, my only three. So that's it's fun going through this his filmography and trying to just seeing the evolution and the changes because I'm watching these kind of out of order. So seeing something like Princess Mononoke after Nausicaa, which is like 13 years later, is really cool.
Yeah, and you're liking the work so far. I I assume.
Of course. I'd be crazy not to enjoy Miyazaki's films. It's just really interesting because, again, growing up here in the States, it's Disney all the time. So, Aladdin, Little Mermaid, The Lion King, that's what I grew up on. So, seeing films from that same era have a completely different style but still be equally as incredible is honestly just really cool and phenomenal. It's why I love watching older films. It's why I love going back and catching up on things that I've missed because there was this treasure trove of incredible works that I've just never seen before, was never had access to before. And that's the thing I love about HBO Max or Crunchyroll or Funimation, right? Is that there's this library of things that I didn't have access to that I can just jump into and rediscover why I love animation, why I'm getting this love for anime and all that great stuff.
Yeah, and it's they are it, well, it's a reason why people are also calling Hayao Miyazaki one of the greatest regarding all this because but anyway, this movie is well, as you know, seen by the title, is Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, and it's based on a manga written by the man himself from 1992, where the synopsis is as follows. Far in the future, after an apocalyptic conflict has devastated much of the world's ecosystem, the few surviving humans live in the scattered, semi-hospitalic environment with what has become a toxic jungle. Young Nausicaa lives in the arid Valley of the Wind and can communicate with the massive insects that populate the dangerous jungle. Under the guidance of the pensive veteran warrior Lord Yupan, Nausicaa works to bring peace back to the Revenge planet.
Yeah.
So, well, I have watched this movie a couple of times, and I can say right now that even though it's not my favorite Miyazaki movie, I do thoroughly enjoy it. And I do. One of the things I know that it might sound silly to some and all that, yes, but I like the fact that he is going out of the way to make sort of like strong female child protagonist, and not just going with males like so many other animated movie tends to do at times. And Nausicaa is arguably one of I dare argue one of his better written character in terms of this kind of movie, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, for sure. I haven't seen, again, I've only seen like 3 of his films, but I feel like I've seen some pretty good ones with Princess Mononoke and My Neighbor Totoro. And I'm going to just say Nausicaa might be my favorite character out of the 3 that I've seen so far. Totoro might be my favorite film, but Nausicaa is probably second, honestly, because I love the character of Nausicaa. I love the world he kind of created, this dystopian, apocalyptic future. And I think, like you said, like having a female protagonist was a thing. Like we've seen Disney princesses, and Nausicaa is yet another princess, essentially. But I do like how she's taking charge, and she's like the leader of these people, and not just someone like Ariel, who is a princess, but pretty much an idiot for the entirety of The Little Mermaid.
Yeah, that's. I don't be that guy, man. She is pretty much an. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I really just like dig everything he did with Nausicaa as a character. I think she's great.
Yeah, and I also the insects. I don't know if it's just a coincidence or not. Have you seen Starship Troopers? I know that is way off topic, but have you seen that movie?
Yes, and I really want to know where you're going with that one.
The insects troop in this insects in the. Is it just me, or do they look similar to them? I mean,
Kinda, yeah.
where it is just a thing that I was been thinking about. Yes, I think about the most oddest things at times.
Yeah, we know. But I'm glad you mentioned the insects, right? These insect creatures. It's just a really cool detail, and again, it just shows how great of a creative mind Miyazaki is, right? We know that airplanes are modeled after like birds, and so they look very bird-like. But all of the ships and everything in this film, there's no birds to be seen, so they're very much modeled after the insects, which I think is kind of a really cool design choice that a lot of people might not pick up on unless you're really paying attention to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and his but Ghibli's design in general, when it comes to old school stuff like this, and for instance Mononoke, I would say is a lot more futuristic and combination with fantastical.
For sure.
Even Spirited Away to some extent feels a bit futuristic. Yeah, I think you can understand what I'm talking about when you see that one. And
I have gotten halfway through Spirited Away. I never had a chance to finish it, but yeah, I get you.
It's funny. I saw that one during one of my birthdays, and I was the only one that weren't sick at home and watching. And everyone wanted to watch it with me because it was my birthday. I mean, yes, we can watch it later. No, we are not. Everyone besides me were pretty much asleep.
You know, they wanted to be there with you. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's kind of sweet.
Yeah. But I was just thinking, what is when it comes to Nausicaa, what is the thing that sticks out to you the most? Honestly, I know it's maybe an audible question to ask, but what would you say is that sticks out to you the most?
It's interesting. Like Naruto, not Naruto. Oof, woof. Too many ends. Nausicaa as a character, I think, is the thing that's gonna stick with me the most from watching this film. I just love how she's three dimensional in the sense that she has moments of weakness, but she also has extreme moments of strength, and none of it feels forced. You can like she's very pacifist by nature, but she's not afraid to get into a fight, and so you see that presented in her character. Which again, at this time, like you said, female characters weren't really presented that way in animation. So
No,
to have Nausicaa be a great leader, be extremely intelligent, but still have all of the empathy. I just really think she's a very well developed and well written character. Some of the supporting cast, I've wanted a little bit more out of them. They're not bad by any stretch, but I feel like a lot of the focus clearly went to Nausicaa and developing her story and how she's navigating this crazy world. Also, completely unrelated, but Shia LaBeouf is a voice actor in the dub, and that is just crazy to me. But yeah,
I
Nausicaa
want.
and Shia LaBeouf is what I take away from this movie.
I wonder though if weren't the dub in the early 2000s.
Yeah, it was dubbed in the early 2000s. Yes, he
Yeah,
was in
then
his Even Stevens fame.
yeah, so that makes sense why he got the gig of having sort of like making it all. But you, also fun fact: Patrick Stewart is doing voice work for the movie.
Yeah, he's Lord Yupa, right?
Uh,
And Mark
um,
Hamill is the mayor, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
Great cast, great dub cast. I mean,
yeah,
Disney,
yeah.
of course, gonna try and get the best dub cast they can for
Yeah.
these films. And it's great.
Yeah, I mean, they have been. They are known for being extremely careful when it comes to dubbing the Miyazaki movies. I do believe they even went so far to get Neil Druckmann, the comic book writer,
Mhm.
to adapt Princess Mononoke's screenplay. If I'm not mistaken, it.
Anybody smart enough to hire Mark Hamill as a voice actor knows what they're doing.
Yeah, but Mark Hamill is amazing in general when it comes to. But anyway, back to Nausicaa. When it comes to, for me, when it comes regarding the strongest part, or okay, one thing before we start for that,
Yeah.
side characters is probably the one thing that you can argue is the weakest point of the Miyazaki's movie. They are always going into extreme details on the main characters, so to speak.
Uh,
Uh,
so that's the
uh,
thing that's present. Because again, I'm coming at this from the amateur.
yeah,
I'm the amateur otaku in this conversation, right? I'm coming at this blind. So that's a recurring like kind of issue he has with his storytelling.
yeah, I would argue. I mean, if you really think about it, is the most interesting character, with the exception of Princess Mononoke, where I argue that the warring. The clashing sides between them are interested because of the ideological ideas. But anyway, back to Nausicaa. And I would argue one of the, I don't know if it's in terms of emotional scenes, but and the ending where she's connecting with the insects
Yeah.
at the, I don't know, but that's a scene that kind of clicks in regards to how, in the terms of messages, in terms of this movie and how I feel that they want to portray. And also, I have to say that it's. I know it's maybe silly to say that it's an it's the animation, because for its time, this is freaking amazing.
Yeah, it's still all hand drawn, right? Like no computers
Yep,
are used in this one.
they have tried a 3D animated movie one time, and no, thank you, no, thank you. Stick to the animation. You're good at that.
Yeah, but like even 2D animation these days is made with computers and everything. So the fact that every
Yeah,
single frame of this, I believe, is hand drawn on paper is just
it is.
incredible.
Yeah, and I would say that it's a very, to some extent, it's very much before its time, considering if you really think about it. Also, it's a it's somewhat of a theme he's really interested in. If you're going also to Mononoke, even if it's a newer film,
Mhm.
he is questioning people's, or do I say, humanity's way of handling the Earth. It's a very and pro pro environment movie, if you really think about it.
Oh yeah, like that message isn't even subtle. It's very environmental. I mean, look at the background we have here, right? I'm glad you mentioned that though, because the dystopian apocalyptic future is a trope, not necessarily a trope, but it's a setting that we've seen a lot. We've seen that in stuff like I wouldn't say Cowboy Bebop's dystopian, but we've seen like far futures where Earth is different, blah blah blah. But we've seen that before in anime, we've seen that before in movies and stories in general. And so I think it's really cool how Miyazaki kind of flipped that on its head a little bit. It's all still there, the messaging is still there, but it's also a kind of beauty to it, right? Like humanity is still thriving. They have these crazy aircrafts. Nausicaa has this her own like little aircraft thing that she rides. We even see like a Koopa car at one point in this film. It's just I love how he's able to make something beautiful and something so tragic. Like the fall of humanity and the fall and the demise of Earth is usually depicted as something very ugly and gray. And here he's showing that life still exists. Humans are still thriving to a certain extent, and the Earth is still beautiful and worth protecting. I just really love that angle he took with designing the story.
Yeah, because while he wanted to show that we can fuck up, there is still if it comes together, we can make it work. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and that's all channeled through Nausicaa.
Yeah, uh, uh, because she's determined of what she wants, what she believes in, and what she wants to do, which is, like we said, very refreshing to see in a female character back in 1984.
Yeah, and like this movie is just the scale of it, right? You were talking about how beautifully animated it was, but like the scope and scale of the story, he could have made this a two-parter if he really wanted to. Like it's I'm not gonna say it's Lord of the Rings level, but it's an epic, right?
Yeah,
In anime form,
absolutely.
it's just
Oh,
amazing. And I
I
think
would
that's
call it
why.
as. Yeah, go
Sorry,
on,
go ahead.
go on. You
No,
go
but I
on.
was just gonna say I think that's why it sticks out to me over the other films that I've already watched, even though those are classics and I love them all. But this one just sticks out to me because I am that fantasy nut, right? I love Lord of the Rings, Avatar: The Last Airbender, all that stuff. And so to see the groundwork here, and he still keeps it, under 2 hours, just about. But he could have made something even grander in scale. But to see that scale still present is just really cool, especially when you take into account this is like what his second movie, I think.
And yeah, it's he did a Lupin the Third movie, Castle of Caligria, at, uh, uh, as his first movie. I can't. I think it's Castle of Caligria,
Mhm.
but and that it's pronounced. But no matter what it is, it's a loop in the third movie that he did.
Gotcha. So yeah, this being his like second film, and it's this magnitude is wild. So great.
I mean, it just showed that he has an eye for it, for stuff like this, and it's movies like this that made Studio Ghibli on the map, and why it's such an inspiration for even Western animation studios to this day.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I have a question for you, Isaac. Have you read the Nausicaa manga?
I haven't, but I want to because I can't find it.
Gotcha. I was wondering, is there major differences between the two? Do you know of?
Not what I know, but if I would know, I would have tell Oldie on the spot, because that's there's stuff that you want to is on your bucket list for want to read and want to watch, and the Nausicaa manga is some of the biggest, one of the most on top in terms of that list for me.
It is currently on Amazon, so I'm probably going to try and snatch it up before it's too hard to find again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah,
nice.
Like out of all of Miyazaki's work, how many are based on manga? Is he like a notorious manga writer as well that I don't know about, or is this like a special case here?
I think it's a special case here. If I'm not mistaken.
Gotcha. That's interesting. That makes this movie even more special in a sense then, huh? Because it's so rare.
Yeah. It's that's one way to put it.
Yeah, like I can just imagine like he's using storyboards and some of the manga he already made. It's just crazy to think about, especially like again the time frame. You said the manga was like in 82, the anime came out in 84. So I assume they were probably doing like pre-production on this film before the manga even finished. I would think.
Yeah. So, at his interview, who knows what he would have done if he weren't going to do the movies? Maybe it would be one of the more famous mangaka in history right now.
I mean, thinking about it, Princess Mononoke and Nausicaa would be two of the greatest manga stories ever, in my opinion. I feel like the manga probably just gets overshadowed because this movie exists. But yeah, that'd be crazy.
Yeah. But we need to have you be a part on covering more, even though we have covered some Miyazaki movies already. We should have you on board on your first watch type of deal, I feel.
I'm down
on more of these again.
Oh yeah, like I'm totally down for that because it's fun going through these, especially since I'm coming at it from a completely different perspective from you. Like again, I don't see how Nausicaa is not in everybody's top 3, but apparently it's not. So I really have to see what these other movies are like.
Just don't watch their third 3D animated.
Oh yeah, you know that's the next one I have to check out, right? Because apparently it's so bad. I need to see what went wrong. But yeah, like so we've talked about like the world. Like, what about the actual story though, Isaac? I want your opinions on like we kind of skirted around it, but like the idea of Nausicaa trying to be a diplomat essentially and trying to find peace and a way out of this so we all come out stronger. Like, do you think that story is kind of handled well and all these supporting characters fit that narrative, or is it like you said before, they aren't the strongest, so it kind of falls apart a little bit?
I think even though you could make the argument of could flesh out the side characters as a story in the whole, the message, the pacing. I think it's a really, really made, well-made story. I wonder if I do wonder if the side characters are more fleshed out in the manga.
That's my thing, right? Because it feels like there's these supporting characters. Like I'm really bad at the names, so I'm sorry in advance. But Uma Thurman's character and that other guy, it feels like they had a story that was cut. Not in the flow of this movie is poor because something was cut out, but more of a they're back and forth and their interactions feels like there's something more that Miyazaki probably tackles in the manga. Because I didn't know it was a manga, but since you mentioned that, it's leading me to think that this is a streamlined version of that story. And so I think that these supporting characters probably have more to do in the manga, honestly, because even if you adapt this movie or turn this movie, reverse engineer it right into a manga, you're what 10 chapters, maybe 10 manga chapters. So if this was it's a cool mini series, I guess, that way, but I feel like he could probably do 20 chapters and flesh out these characters. And I'm hoping that's probably what happened. If we get our hands on that manga, we definitely have to talk about it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely 100% agree with you.
Sweet.
But is there anything you want to cover more before we wrap this thing up? Because I feel that we have talked a lot about this movie.
Yeah, I like how we're still vague enough to where this can count as basically spoiler free review for folks who haven't watched Nausicaa like me. There's like as far as spoiler details, there's nothing that I think we need to hit. It's just a really strong film. I love, again, Nausicaa is a great character. The world Miyazaki built here is fantastic. The story is paced well. The message is powerful and it's effective. So it's just a really great animated film that I'm glad I've watched. So that's all I have to add.
Yeah, same thing here. So, well, Mike, where can people find you and everything you want to plug?
Yeah, you can find me at Novice Cinephile everywhere, on Twitter, on YouTube, on TikTok, anywhere. You can find me at Novice Cinephile there. You can also find me at The Chatter After, where Isaac, Brandon, and I do movie reviews. And so anything that's not anime or manga related, you can find at The Chatter After, wherever you get your podcasts. Also on youtube.com/noviceCinephile. So check that out as well. And of course, you can find my written work at collider.com.
Yeah. And, well, you can find me, my work at Webom Entertainment, and you can find me over at Emblemaniac on Twitter. And, you can find the pod at Amateur Otaku Pod. And you can, we are on every pod site except Podbean, or are we there now too?
No, Podbean. You guys are gonna have to manually create a feed for that on Podbean.
Yeah. Okay. Every place besides Podbean, reviews like this is going to be on the pod sites. Although we have stuff like the My Hero Weekly or Bi-Weekly with Spike's Family, those are ends up on YouTube only. So, yeah. But have it awesome, guys.
Take care.
Bye.